Well, we are very excited today to have Bronwyn Simpson with us on our AT Collective podcast. And Bronwyn, thank you for coming along today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited too.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure to get to know you more as we've been working together in the last year. So I love to learn more about all the things that you know and the things that you've done. So really excited for this interview today. So Bronwyn works at the University of Sydney and she's teaching occupational therapy and doing research. I'll let you go into your details of your PhD. And Bronwyn teaches rehab and assistive technology. So Bronwyn, tell us a little bit about your PhD.
This is a good chance to practice my elevator pitch. So I'm looking at, I'm writing up a case study of a novel program. So the program it's called Sargood on Coleroy. It's short-term accommodation for people with spinal cord injuries. It's a fantastic kind of world-leading type program. So I thought it would be interesting to look at what they do, but also what we can learn about addressing wellbeing from that program. They're in the very fortunate position to have that mandate, not just get someone home or deal with these problems or fight these fires, but they can really proactively look at what gives people meaning, very strong leisure program. So when a service can have wellbeing at the forefront, what can we learn about that in terms of our programs and also as OTs?
That sounds amazing. And from everything I've heard about Sargood, it's just, it's so good. All the things that they do and the location is beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. So love to hear more about your research as you move on. So to get started, do you think you could tell us something about you that not many people would know?
Well, something I guess interesting is I'm kind of from a family of OTs. So my mum, well, she's recently retired, but was an OT. My dad, even, he did a careers test, must have been back in the 70s, and he got placed as, OT would suit you, which was unusual for a bloke at that time. And I'm married to an OT as well. So very much runs in the family.
Do you feel that was in some way inspiring you or leading a path, or you tried to rebel and go a different path but drew you back? Like what happened there?
Well, I guess at 18 you don't consciously think, I want to do what my mum does, but at least I'd heard of it. That was a good step, and I kind of knew that it wasn't just kind of OC rehab or counselling someone when they lose their jobs, as one person thought OT was. So I guess that's how I'd heard of OT. In year 12 for an assignment, I had to do a research project, and I thought, I'll take advantage of a source of information and I'll answer the question, what resources are there out there for people with disabilities, which I now know I could have potentially refined that question a little bit. But I thought, I can talk to my mum, and she was working at the time, and I can go and visit there and look at their resources. So I ended up loving that question. She was in an aged care sort of stroke ward, so meeting people there and looking, one-handed equipment and all these things. And I realized, actually, no, I really like this. And it was, I guess, then coincidentally looking back, a lovely mix of creativity. I did really well in art and bio. So creativity and science, it ended up nicely blending those two.
Yeah, and that's something that I'd say about assistive technology. There is that creative part to it because you've got to problem solve with all sorts of solutions. And so I know that you've worked with lots of different types of assistive technology, but what are you most passionate about?
Well, I guess electronic AT would be my specialty and passion. So in rehab, there's all kinds of equipment we'd use, but I dabbled a bit looking at phone access, and I programmed an environmental control unit. Oh wow, this is fun. So that kind of piqued my interest. So when a job came up, a specialist role came up at Ability Technology, which was a not-for-profit, looking at electronic AT, I moved into that and worked in that area clinically. So anything high tech. So technology to help people be able to use their computer, phone, tablet, control the house, anything that kind of plugs in or anything that would stop working if there was a blackout. That's kind of my area of AT.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So then can you tell me, I think you've described a little bit about your why you do what you do, what gets you up in the morning that keeps you interested in working with this kind of work?
Yeah, well, I think I loved rehab, but was really noticeable shift when I started working in a specialized role is that it was something really concrete. I wasn't guessing whether something was working. I mean, it's not easy and it's not straightforward, especially if someone also has a cognitive impairment and there's all sorts of social issues that can complicate things. So I'm not saying it's easy, but it was very observable outcomes compared to, I don't know what your arm's going to do after your stroke, and we'll do our best. But it was, yeah, I really liked having something concrete. It was very rewarding kind of area. And also the input that you have has so many outputs. So if you can get someone on the computer, it's just endless occupations and activities that are then open to that person. So yeah, definitely a very rewarding area. I think that probably applies to all sorts of AT, but I think particularly controlling your home, being able to use your phone, being able to use your computer, it's big impact and very observable. But I think as well, my why now I'm more in a teaching role is then equipping OT students to go out and do that. I think it's an area in our field that is a little bit underserviced, or there's definitely knowledge gaps. And now it's hundreds of students going out who have some skills in that too. At least, the technology is going to change, but at least they've heard of this stuff and know what's possible. So hopefully they're flying the flag a little bit and going, hey, we should add phone access to our initial assessment form and be screening for those goals, because I know that these things are possible. But they're also going with quite specialist knowledge too. So we've just run practical exams, and they're programming ECUs, or environmental controls, and setting up a head mouse and showing someone what settings they do on their phone. So that's definitely very rewarding, to be then equipping future OTs to go out and do this as well.
Now, is that just your university? I mean, obviously you're the one teaching that at your uni. Have you heard of other unis also presenting that kind of work?
Some are, but not necessarily strongly in the electronic AT. Yeah, so it sort of depends who's available and what resources they have. All unis would teach general assistive tech as core, so wheelchairs and bathroom equipment and kitchen, but there'd be varying levels of expertise at unis in terms of the electronic stuff. And also you've got to have the equipment. So I'm very grateful that Sydney Uni's invested in purchasing this stuff so the students can try it. We've recently moved into a new building, and part of that is a specialist teaching space with a home automation system in it, which I helped to set up. So yeah, it's fantastic because we can then really evaluate that kind of system and move beyond that kind of shiny home automation. That's really exciting, but look at how does that actually work? Where is it fit for purpose? Who's that going to work for? What are its limitations? So that we're lucky to have that resource to then teach the students about this type of tech.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. I've got some students at the moment, and yeah, it's certainly not common, I don't think, the level of that you're providing at the Uni of Sydney, which is just lovely.
Yeah, no, it's been good.
Really,
yeah.
You're so a bit groundbreaking in some ways.
I think as well, we're in the undergraduate, so the Bachelor of OT course, we've just introduced a disability and participation major. So all the OT students are coming through with really strong disability knowledge. And part of that is a new unit about assistive technology that all students do, OTs. The other one's an elective, although that's very popular. This one is core, and it's also open to students from other backgrounds. So we're sort of teaching. So it's a little more general. It's not to the level that OTs would prescribe it, but we can explore some really interesting issues around OT, its potential, things like ethics and risk that all the OT students are now getting from first year, and also some students outside the discipline, which is really exciting.
Yeah, very, very cool. So if you had to think about what's the most rewarding piece of AT that you might have recommended in your career, what and why that was rewarding for you?
Well, this is heaps. It was almost everyone. So the two that came to mind first, I'll go with that because I assume they came to mind for a reason. So one was a guy who had a recent spinal cord injury. He did work as a builder previously. I saw him as an assessor for the workplace modification scheme. So I was looking at how we could get him into a more office-based role in his previous job, which we easily could do with a computer and a few other things. So I was researching giant scanners so they could make these huge plans electronic. So it was fun to research. I really liked dabbling in the vocational side of things. I wasn't in OC rehab, but to work with people to facilitate their jobs was really fun. But for this guy to go straight into return to work to his previous role early after injury was just so important compared to going down he clearly was an injured worker and he was on a lifetime care scheme after that workplace accident, but it's such a different mindset to go straight back to work. So that stands out to me, what we can do through someone being able to get on a computer. Another guy, just because he was so grateful, he stood out to me. So looking at home control technology, and I went out and he really, really wanted voice control. I don't think you can get it anymore, but there was this that looked like a UFO, a little voice controlled remote. And we had a spare one, so I could sell it to him then and there, a second-hand one. So we fixed he could get, his goals achieved straight away. But his big thing was air conditioner control. And I can't remember if it was going off or coming on, but it was on a timer. So he was there. He had MS from memory. He can't adjust his blankets, take on and off clothing, temperature regulation's an issue anyway. And he was dreading whatever it was, 10 p.m. when I think the aircon would go off or come on. And he knew he was going to be really uncomfortable for the rest of the night. He had an old window Rattler aircon. So it was actually quite simple on-off control. So I just went, while I was there, went to JB Hi-Fi and bought him a little plug module that then the voice remote worked and fixed his problem then and there. And he was just so grateful. And it was nice to kind of have a quick outcome rather than, okay, here's a report and we'll hope for approval. He was self-funding, so that made it easier. But he always stands out to me as someone who I made a very immediate and big difference to, just because of how grateful he was. So there's two that stand out, but I could say that about almost everyone that I've worked with.
And I guess that's the essence of assistive tech. It's not about the tech. It's not about that. It's about the changed lives, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. And the tech's just part of one of the tools, but it's about that outcome and then what they can do with that or how it improves their well-being or quality of life. Yeah.
And I love the phrase, it's an enabler of participation.
Yes.
It's the thing that gets people doing stuff, which is so important.
Yeah. And I think it is about participation and it is about that person. The tech the tech's very kind of cool and attracts the attention, but that should fade into the background and it's about what it enables that person to do.
Yeah, beautiful. But I'm guessing there's been some times when things haven't gone to plan, particularly with EAT. How do you overcome those challenges when things don't go the way you want them to?
Well, you can guarantee and plan for things not going right because there'll always be technical issues. And I find them really intimidating. I always dreaded the phone calls where someone rang and said, this isn't working. And I always immediately think, oh, I've done something wrong. Or particularly if there's mainstream tech as part of the system, I'm actually not very good at that. I don't know how to fix a Wi-Fi, I'm pretty techie, but not with the mainstream stuff. So it's hard for me. I'm like, well, is it that or is it that? And so I panic a bit. So the way to deal with that is just, that keep calm and carry on thing is to just be systematic. So troubleshooting and being realistic what you can achieve. So how much can I achieve here on the phone versus I might need to go out and do a visit, systematically working through each of the parts and say, okay, I'll try, it might be the cable, so I'll try another cable. Okay, that still works. That wasn't the cable, working through in that systematic way. And not being embarrassed to say, well, that's not my area, let's get an IT guy in. Or we had an IT tech support person on the team, luckily too. So being able to reach out for help for the bits that I don't know, and not having that expectation that I can fix everything immediately. I think that helps me when the tech issues come up.
And that is so refreshing to hear, because I'm the same. I love technology, but there's some things that I'm not great at. And it's actually really inefficient for me to do some parts of, particularly mainstream tech and programming TVs. I've got a husband in IT and he does all that. So it's not my natural skill set. So it's cheaper to get a tech person to do that than me to spend that time. But I know what I want, and then I can refer on.
Yes. It's like together. Any part of OT, isn't it? We can contribute our knowledge of person and environment occupation, but the tech bit, it might be a team that's doing that. And as you said, it might be cheaper, or they might be closer to them, or it might mean that the person's then more independent in getting help from generic tech companies rather than calling the OT every time. So yeah, it's a team effort, OT.
Yes, yeah, it definitely is. So then, do you have some role models or people who you go to that have helped you on your career journey?
I just can't not say my husband, and I know that's sappy, but he is my role model. So as I said, he's an OT. He specializes in electronic tech, and he also works at Sargood. But he doesn't take no for an answer, to the point of, okay, well, I'm going to invent that if it doesn't exist. So he's such a boundary pusher, particularly, so he specializes in spinal cord injury, particularly for the higher level quads, where there's lots of options for, a young fit para to then go surfing or whatever. But he's like, but these people that can't use their hands very well, what are they going to do? So he works with companies. So he's working at hands-free lift access. Lift access is really problematic if you can't push a button. So he's looking at sensors where they can wheel up to a certain spot. And then if you're on this side, it means I want to call the lift and go to level 2. And if I go in this bit, it means I want to go to level 3. So it's completely hands-free, but that's obviously very complicated, and working with companies. And he does a lot with 3D printing as well. So solving problems in, very significant problems in a really low cost way by 3D printing a different wheelchair joystick controller. He's lots of 3D printing stuff. And he's recently, he wouldn't say he's invented it, he says he's put the system together, but he's found a solution and put together a solution for chin control of remote control cars and sailing boats. So it's really fun occupation for someone who may not be able to move very much at all. They can then, with a chin controller, be burning around with these cars and doing jumps, and having this massive impact in the world where they usually can't control very much. So there's a few examples, but I think he definitely, I love how he's pushing the boundaries and not satisfied with existing solutions. He's creating new ones. So we'll see what else he does, but there's a few examples.
And so if someone was interested in those really special areas, is that for people who turn up to Sargood, or does Dave also do other work with other people?
Yeah, no, he has an OT, assisted tech business. So he can see clients, but Sargood also has a community program too. So not just for guests or people with spinal cord injuries. I guess logistically, you probably need to live in Sydney to access that. But the remote control cars, he's put out a full instructional video on YouTube and released the 3D printing patterns. So people, there's people in the States now printing them and using them. So that's now open source or public.
Oh, that's amazing. And how good is it that he doesn't take no for an answer, which I'm sure you would as well. Yeah.
Not as much as him, I think. So I have learned a lot from him with that. I think you take no for an answer if you don't feel equipped to do something about it. He's just knows, well, okay, I'm going to give that a crack and do something about it.
Awesome. So if you have someone who's interested in working with assistive technology, occupational therapists, other professions, is there some one sentence advice you would give to them?
My first reaction was, well, good, because we can't not do this. Like, this is core OT. Like, using a phone is such a core occupation now. I mean, not everyone has problems with it, right? But if someone can't use their phone, we can't just ignore it. So I think, sorry, I've already gone over a sentence, but
no, go for it.
At least screen for these goals with your clients. Think about, how are they going to use a phone? How are they going to use a computer? If you've got clients with any kind of impairments that could impact on that ability, even if you don't know what to do, at least screen if that's a goal, and then get the help you need. So suppliers can help you refer on for that bit to someone else, or seek some mentoring or supervision to help fill in that gap if you're not sure what to do.
So you referenced the word goal just then. I just wonder, when working with people, if they even knew that it would be a goal. Like, I certainly have known people who haven't been able to answer the phone but didn't even know it was possible.
No.
Is part of that the education that leads to coming up with good goals, or what would you comment on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think we as OTs can expect clients or to even know what OT is, but what the types of goals that we can address. So some places have goal banks of, here's the types of things we do, but most places would have at least an initial assessment type form where you're screening for goal areas. So put some prompts on that. So you're remembering to ask the question, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, because someone might not even know that that was even possible.
No, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so education sounds like, I know you're teaching in that role, but the education is a big part of what we do as well.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, I think OTs, we don't set goals around things we don't have answers for. Like, we set goals, we screen for things we know we can solve, I think. So, yeah, definitely in terms of educating OTs, I think in various ways trying to get the word out there that you don't have to know how to solve it, but quite a lot is possible. So don't be scared, or don't neglect certain areas of life. Even if, I mean, we can't know everything as OTs. There's so many skills, and we can't be specialist in everything. But as the primary treating therapist, at least should know what the goal areas are and be comprehensive, even if they're pulling in supports or other specialists to address different areas. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those therapists who may find that electronic AT isn't their strong suit, I know you talked about supervision and mentoring, still screening for those areas, but being able to refer on, or or consult work, or what kind of options? So
they could refer on to someone else to address the goal, or you can ask a specialist to help kind of mentor you. So you're still the one addressing it, but they're kind of supervising you quite specifically. And that's an area I'm looking into getting, because I know there's lots of knowledge gaps, and I want to help as many people with disabilities as I can. So yeah, totally refer on, or get someone to mentor and supervise you through it. And then also using the expertise of the suppliers as well. So your client and the context and the goals, but the supplier wouldn't, but particularly specialist suppliers will know then the features of their tech and where that can fit in. So I know a lot of suppliers are increasingly doing rentals and sort of support for therapists to set stuff up, because they just see that's required. So, yeah.
How has telehealth changed that in regards to maybe consult work, from a specialist coming in and joining in with another therapist?
Yeah, well, that's definitely opened that up. So there aren't many specialists in this. So there might not be one exactly where you are or exactly where your client is. So it's just telehealth has opened up the possibility of accessing specialists from anywhere. And I think particularly if there's still an OT or someone on the ground at the person's house, there's no reason we can't now have a camera and have someone else looking in or providing advice or talking you through how to set up the phone or what settings to choose. Yeah, definitely has opened that up. I mean, it's been possible for a very long time, right? But it's just we're now used to it and it's now normalized, so people are less scared of it and it's more commonplace. Yeah,
I think that's it. It's the acceptance. Everyone knows the word Zoom, and
a
couple of years ago that wasn't even a thing.
I did a project at Ability Technology where we looked at remote support for trialing assistive tech. So I mean, there were challenges in all stages of that, even just like, how do we get it back when this person can't easily go to the post office? So thinking about couriers and logistics. But even back then, from memory, we didn't use Zoom. We might have done video calls on a phone, but it was often phone calls and talking people through, and then using software we could log into their computer and control it and see it ourselves. But that's kind of maybe 8 years ago, and that was certainly possible then. I mean, challenges were when there wasn't anyone with any tech experience on the ground. So you say, oh, we'll just plug that into the USB, and they're like, oh, which one's the USB? So you do need, of course, you can talk someone through all of that, but they might get too intimidated and it's just too overwhelming. So I think having someone who has enough confidence to follow instructions like that helps. But yeah, certainly a lot is possible, and even more possible now that we're also good at video calls.
And even the internet's better now than what we had 8 years ago. Even that in itself, like, so many things have gotten us to this place, maybe. So it is a pretty great time. So from what I'm hearing, if I was thinking I was someone interested in the field, what I'm hearing is don't be afraid of jumping in and going, okay, if I go down this path and need to increase my scope of practice, my competencies, there's people around who can help.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. Yeah. And you can't be, in a way, because if you're too scared, who's going to do this? And what's it going to mean for your client? So I'm not trying to bring out a stick, but yeah, I think it really is core OT now, I guess is what I would say. But you don't need to be scared. And there is help there. Yeah.
And practice in your lounge room before you're in front of people.
And also don't take something on that you really don't know. Like, don't just take an eye gaze referral if you don't know how to use that. And eye gaze is a mouse, so unless you can confidently assess all the cheaper mouse options first to see if eye gaze is even suitable, that might be something to pass on and start with something simple, or at least get in some supervision for something like that, because it's also part of our duty of care. And if we're applying for funding for something, you need to know it pretty confidently and not just kind of have a stab either. Yeah, so it's a balance there, but there definitely is support and help there, and it's just so important that we are addressing this stuff. Yeah.
And explore all the low-cost free stuff first. There's actually a lot out there, or low-cost options as well that anyone could do as a short-term thing until the specialist could come in. Maybe like there's more out there, isn't there?
Yeah. Yep. So get to know what settings are on the phones and on the computer already. A lot of that could be just changing the mouse speed or something like that, or a little wedge so they can position their hand and then they can use their phone. You don't need something high tech, or just scale back the goal a little bit to the bits you could do earlier and then have someone else come in for the trickier stuff. So at least maybe set up auto answer on their phone so they can answer their calls and Siri to make calls. Even if they can't do everything yet on their phone, there might be shorter term or simpler goals that you can address yourself in the meantime.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, hopefully some people have been inspired to play around and learn more about electronic AT. So if you were on a radio station where you could speak to the whole world for 2 minutes, what would you like to say?
I find these questions so hard because I take it too seriously. I'm like, oh, I've got to say the absolute best thing. This is my one shot. So anyway, I know it's just hypothetical. I think, for me, thinking about this, it just comes down to kindness. just there just seems to be more kindness in the world. I know that sounds simplistic and naive, but just looking out for each other, and doing best for each other, not just yourself. That's how the world will run best, and hopefully it means other people are kind to you as well. And I think I have a strong sense of justice as well, and I think OT can help to bring more good and kindness and justice in the world as well. So I don't know, I haven't formed that into an articulate 2 minutes, but if I could say only 2 minutes worth of things, they're probably the core of my values, those two topics.
I love it. It's really, really good. And for people interested in moving into this kind of area, any 3 lessons you'd like to share?
So one I think I've covered, but I'll reinforce it. So don't ignore or neglect goals just because you don't know what the solution is. And I think I've learned that from my own mistakes where I've too quickly brushed something off. So one, I always think of this client who had a stroke. He lived on a boat previously and wanted to go back to living on a boat. And the team, we just thought that's too hard, encourage him away from that. And looking back, I'm like, why didn't they? Surely there was some way, right? And even if there wasn't, we should have tried. So I think there's been times like that I look back with some regret for that person's sake, and also have fun to address that as an OT. So don't disregard goals or don't completely neglect them in your assessments. Be open to goals, even if you're not quite sure how to get to them. And I think that links to the second one, be a can-do OT. An OT colleague of mine had a client who said to her, I like you because you're a can-do OT. And unfortunately, that hadn't always been his experience. And I think if we come with a stance of yes, or I'll find out, or openness, I think we can sometimes, it's a balance, right? But we can sometimes fall too much on the no, risk, protect you side of things. So just that stuck with me, that one, that be a can-do OT. And I think that's what I admire about my husband. He does that well. And also just take opportunities and network. Doors are going to open. So see what comes in front of you. That's what my career has been. I'm not very ambitious. I never set goals. I've just kind of gone, oh, that sounds good. Or, follow a path along and taken opportunities. But I think there's lots of possibilities out there. So if something comes up, give it a go. Be brave and go and chat to people at conferences, which is like my worst fear. But whenever I've done it and met someone, it's always opened something up or benefited us both in some way. So just be open to opportunities and people that present themselves to you. Sort of vague third one, but I think that's helped me in my life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's very, very good. And any favorite quotes that inspire you?
Yeah, I love it. I don't know who wrote it, but it was, I think, the American OT Association motto one year for OT week. And that was, OTs ask what matters to you, not what's the matter with you. And I think that captures it really well. I love, and I think we still need to understand this better, of that concept of meaning and how to get to what gives someone meaning. I think that's kind of where my PhD is going. Is we know that occupations are good and that's what we're all about, but which ones? How do we get to the ones that will have that real bang for your buck in terms of someone's well-being? And also that just taps into this strengths-based thing, which is really important. It's not about someone's problems, it's what's important to them. So I really like that quote.
I love it, love it, love it. Well, thank you. That's been amazing. But is there anything that you would like to let people know about, where they can find you, where they can get in touch with you if they want to find out more?
Sure, yeah. So I can provide contact details, particularly for clinicians if they are keen to get some supervision or ask questions. So get in touch with me for that. I am fairly active on the NDIS OT Providers Facebook page, so I try to answer any electronic tech questions that come through my feed. And also just as a researcher, Don't be scared of research as clinicians. We do a lot of collaborations and help clinicians or work on joint projects with clinicians. So if you've got a curly question or a project or something you think it might help to have some more structured research around, definitely get in touch with me, because there'll be ways we can do that. It might be that we can set up an honours student research project, or we also have students go out on project placements and can help with sort of your deliverables too. And there's funding grants to help clinicians get into research. So yeah, don't be too scared of this clinician research divide, because it's not quite as wide as you think. And I'd love to collaborate with anyone who also is keen to maybe do some research.
How did you get to the place where you're saying that? Because would you have said that 6 years ago? Or
maybe not 8 years ago, maybe 6. Yeah, no, I didn't picture myself in an academic career. And I fell into doing a master's. I thought I was applying to do a quality project, and then I got this grant to do a research. I was like, oh, and I shouldn't say this, but I literally went through it because I couldn't have that conversation to pull out. But then I ended up really loving it. And that sort of opened doors to then teaching, and then being at a university. I was just around researchers all the time. I'm like, oh, this isn't that scary. And my master's supervisor said, oh, watch out, because research is addictive. And I was like, what? no, it's not. But now I'm like, okay, I see what she means. Yeah. So it was like a gradual introduction into that world. But now I span both clinician and research academic world. It really isn't the big divide that people may see it as being.
Wow, that's very, yeah. I know where to go if I've got some questions. How about that?
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Is there anything else you'd want to say, or is there anything else?
No, I think they were great questions. Thanks, Karen. It was really wonderful chat with you.
Yeah, really enjoyed chatting with you today, and hopefully I'll see you around soon.
See you, Karen.
Thanks.